Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to a special Christmas edition of the podcast. Wishing you a Merry Christmas. I'm recording this on Christmas and releasing it on Christmas. So, Merry Christmas to you. And if you're listening to it after Christmas, just want to wish you happy holidays and a happy new year. And hope you are well whenever you are listening to this. The guest today is Sobra, and as soon as I finished recording this conversation, I was looking forward to releasing it because it's an incredible resource. Sobra has obviously spent a lot of time working on himself and reading and learning and building himself, and he's here today to share this wisdom with you. Sobra is the first anonymous account on the Danny Miranda podcast, and I don't suspect there will be many in the future, but I vibe with his vibe. I vibe with the tweets he puts out, his thoughts, and I love what he does. So I figured, why not learn more about the man behind the Twitter account and learn about his vision? So in this episode, we discussed how to take someone from depressed or a bad mental state into a positive one. We discussed his vision, and overall, this was a really insightful episode for me, and I think it will be for you as well. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know on Twitter at HeyDannyMiranda is the best place to give me feedback about the episode, and I look forward to hearing from you. This is my episode with Sobra.
Interesting people, thought-provoking conversations, nutrition for your brain. Journey through the minds of the world's top performers and discover what it really takes to achieve your highest version. This is the Danny Miranda Podcast.
So, why don't we start off with this question that I'm curious about, which is, why are you anonymous?
Yeah, so people ask me this a lot, and I guess it's initially I didn't really know which way the direction of the Twitter account was going, and that's where it started. And I guess it just arose from the ideas I was sharing, the information I was putting out didn't need to be attached to me, like as the person that I am, and I also wanted to build it on its own thing and as its own merit. I think a lot of the time, what we see with Twitter and online and the internet in general is people can build profiles from just the information they're putting out, and you're not riding the coattails of, how attractive you are or, what, people that know you before. So I think it started with that. And I've kind of continued it because I don't really want to be famous. I've heard it, and not to say that I am and that I'm a legend or whatever, but, as you grow in internet notoriety, shall we say, it just increases the chances that, people will find out who you are. And I think just as a fail-safe, because there are a lot of weird internet people out there, I would just prefer to be able to go shopping or whatever. This is, extrapolating years ahead, of course, but everyone that has talked about it, about fame or, whatever, is just they wish they could just go back and be anonymous or whatever. And so I think that's just a reason for me I'm planning against that for the long term. Even if, no one's ever going to recognize me ever, that's good. I want that. But I just want that to be the option rather than, Sobra itself is not me as such. It's like a representation of ideas and knowledge and things that I think exists as a separate entity. And that's why, I guess.
Okay, so perfect. Let's dive into what are the ideas that Sobra represents to you.
Okay. So it started with me sharing with predominantly other young guys the information that I had come across over the years of research into the body. the mind, bodybuilding specifically as well, mentality as a whole, philosophy, all of the things that I've taken bits and pieces from all the different bits of information and books that I've read or just experiences that I've had in life, and collating that into this Sobra thing. What I think the ideas behind it are, as a young guy, becoming independent in your thinking. That's probably the main one, is knowing that, or realizing that, no one's coming to save you. You have to be self-reliant as a dude in this world, and that's fine. That's good. You don't want to be reliant on anyone else for anything, because then no one can take that away from you. So inherently, like, knowing all the stuff that makes you strong and internalizing that, knowing the stuff that makes you mentally free, and knowing all the things that our mind tries to trick us into and, build an illusion of in our mind. Those are the things that I want to share with. And, it's also having a bit of fun. It's also being a dude, talking about girls, talking about life in general. But I think it really took its own course, predominantly this year when it all kind of expanded for the most part. But if I can get people as well, I think one of the main things that I try to get across is like this outdoor lifestyle, being active and healthy, treating the body right, and really getting people to understand why they should do that, and knowing that they will have an unmatched quality of life when they're doing that, and all of these things which I think for the most part will raise the level of a community up if people can spread these ideas. And people have talked to me like, oh, dude, I've been following your diet advice, and then I got my parents into it, and now they're feeling the best they have in years. Like, that shit is so gratifying to me that's why I do it. And that's why I write for Sobra every day. And if I can just put out this information that kind of coalesces the mind, body, and spirit, because they're all related, of course, and interlocked, can't have one without the other. All of that stuff, I think that summarizes it, is developing the mind, developing the body, and developing the spirit in a way that is accessible and kind of multiplies when people share that information out, while having fun along the way, I think is what Sobra is all about.
I love it, man. And how has the mission changed at all since you started it? Or has it stayed basically the same from your perspective?
Well, when I first started, it wasn't like I sat down. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Like initially, it was a bit of shit posting. I started the account when I was traveling. So it was also just a bit of a way to, document my travels as such. But I kind of realized that there was something to it earlier this year, when, the followers started racking up. I kind of made contact with some people on the online sphere who taught me about how I could, really make this into a business or whatever else. And I don't think the ethos has changed somewhat, because it's just been, what I've been interested in, and that hasn't changed. And I've been interested and have a love for and a passion for the same things, for, I'd say, around 10 years now, when I first kind of developed into a higher end teenager and started researching these things on my own. So I think the ethos more so, it hasn't changed, but it just developed out of its own earlier this year, when I realized that there was something to this and I could treat it a bit more seriously than I was.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned, you started exploring these ideas in the last 10 years. And I can't help but ask a question that Nate Schmidt passed along. I texted Nate and said, hey, Nate, Sobra's coming on the podcast. I know you're a huge fan of him. do you have any specific questions? And he says, this is direct quote from Nate Schmidt, what were some of the main influences in his journey of straight up fucking wokeness from Nate Schmidt there? So yeah, I'm curious about this.
Well, it depends what you mean by wokeness. That can mean a lot of things. I think in today's world that it means, being aware of the powers that are behind the scenes in today's world. But I guess on the whole, if you think about wokeness as just being, spiritually awake and mentally awake and aware of, the mental machinations of the human mind that we can all fall into, I guess, if we're not aware. And that principle of awareness, once you are aware, you can never become unaware. It's like one day a switch gets flipped in your head and you start to realize that, let's say, the principle of you are not your thoughts. That can mean a lot of things, but it does mean for the person that hasn't, heard that phrase before or doesn't understand what it means, yes, we have thoughts, we have feelings, we have emotions that pass into our head, but what we are is not the thought. The thought appears in our mind, and we react to the thought, or we can just view the thought and let it pass. And the level of, let's say, sleeping or not being awake or being unaware is where you'll have a thought and you'll let it consume you. And you'll become angry because you had an angry or jealous thought, or you'll become sad and depressed because you had a sad or depressing thought. And that distinction, knowing that the thought is a temporary thing that just pops into your head from the ether or is a reaction to something that's going on outside, you have a choice to not become that thought. And once you're aware of that distinction, is that you are the consciousness that is receiving or reacting to the thought, kind of sitting behind the brain, if you will, versus being, angry at every news article that you see, pissed off that someone cuts you off in traffic. We have that choice once you are aware. And if you take that to mean as being awake and wokeness or whatever, then I think that started, for me, it always comes back to, I know it's a bit of a mean book at this point, but Meditations by Marcus Aurelius was one of the first books that I read that I guess made me awake, made me aware of these principles of Stoicism and realizing like, okay, there's stuff that we can control, our thoughts and our actions. Well, not our thoughts, our reactions to the thoughts and our actions. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two things that we have control over as human beings. So all of our mental capacity and energy should be directed to those two things. When you extrapolate past that and try to control things that are outside of your control, other people's thoughts, other people's actions, the weather, oh, it's fucking raining again, it's so annoying. Ugh. Like, think about how dumb that is. You can't change the weather. You can't go into a room, okay, so we've got rain, I want sun because I'm going out today. No, that doesn't exist. So the mental stress that you go through by saying, oh, it's a fucking shitty day, it's completely pointless. And that's kind of illustrates my point in that there's things that we can control, ourselves, our actions, and our reactions to stuff that's happening around us. So that book, Meditations, kind of outlays those distinctions and the principles of Stoicism. And that, for me, set everything else in motion. And for the most part, it was reading. And reading these books that people had put out, hundreds and thousands of years ago, that, people have figured this stuff out. People have figured out the machinations of the human mind, and they've figured out, what's important, what's not important. And it really was just, through high school and through the earlier years of college, I was just reading, I had these inner thoughts myself, but I just didn't really know how to put them into practice or didn't know how to phrase them. And I didn't understand what they were. I saw people getting upset over shit that didn't matter. And that stuff never really inherently fazed me like that much. I was always a relatively chill person. But reading for the most part, and if people are interested, I have a few reading lists on my Twitter, but I could probably do another. If people message me like, "What are your top 5 books?" or whatever, I can reply to them. But reading, other influences. There's this idea of standing on the shoulders of giants. Is like there are great men throughout history who have lived their entire lives and then wrote books about the lessons that they've lived. And you'd be an absolute fool not to take that on board and not to apply that to your own life. Like, oh yeah, I've got it figured out. I don't need anyone's help. No, it's just silly. And you're not going to take 100% of the ideas from everyone, from every book. But every book you read is going to have 4 or 5 things in it that really stick with you and permanently alter your state of mind. So it is about just having the awareness that, you are not your thoughts, making that mental distinction. Once you know that, everything else and you put the time in as well with reading, everything progresses from there. But it does take that initial awakening to realize like, okay, I've been stuck in these silly thought loops or whatever it is that doesn't really matter. It's not getting me anywhere. It's not helping me progress. And the other thing is when you do that internal work and, separate the ego somewhat, it doesn't happen overnight. But once you realize, okay, I'm not going to get upset if I'm bad at something, but know that, I can improve at something and I'm not going to beat myself up that I'm bad about it because I haven't practiced it. It doesn't make sense. It always makes me laugh when people say, oh, I can't do a pull-up. Oh, well, do you practice pull-ups every day? No. Then why would you be able to do a pull-up? Like people, they all have this idea that I am a bad person at X. But if you've never practiced and learned and failed and made mistakes in X, how the fuck are you going to know how to do X properly, And letting go of the ego and knowing that you can, learn anything you want as a human if you have the wherewithal, the awareness, and you're awake in that, then, you can do anything. And that's kind of the progression of this whole thing of Sobra. Started with that book, many years ago, and then just through living life, making mistakes, and reading a lot as well, I think is how it all unfolded.
Where do you think that idea of people believing they're not good enough comes from? Do you think that it's something society implants in us? Do you think it's something that is inherent to our nature as human beings? Because it is so widespread that people believe that they cannot achieve. And I'm curious where you believe that comes from.
I think it can be given to us, right, at a young age, I think. Our society is not the healthiest at the moment in Western culture. There is a lot of mass media propaganda. There is a lot of broken souls that are emotionally harmed that will pass on their trauma to their kids. There's a lot of, you have to be a doctor, you have to be an engineer, you have to be XYZ, otherwise you're not successful. And you're not a good person unless you do these things and behave at school and all these things that Don Miguel Ruiz calls agreements. And if you've been given this agreement at a young age as a child, when you're very accepting and trusting of the things that adults tell you, because, that's biologically how you learn as a child to kind of act in society, is if you're told like, oh, you'll never be a rocket scientist, you're not smart enough. And as a child, you just go, oh, okay, I'm never going to be a rocket scientist. I'm not going to be able to do this thing outside of the norm. Then you internalize that. That coupled with, propaganda from society, the larger society as a whole, means that people don't value themselves. They have a low self-worth, and that can all be correlated as well to poor diet, poor sleep, poor technology habits. All of that is going to make you feel depressed and worthless and low energy and all the rest of it. You're never really going to feel like you can conquer the world when you're in that state. So it's a couple things, but the good thing is that it's fixable, and people listening can know that the self-work that you do inside and the deprogramming of these beliefs and agreements that may have been given to you at a young age, and really thinking about, okay, why do I believe that I can't do something? And usually it's not like this long, drawn-out logical analysis where you've gone, okay, well, I guess I can't do that. If you've tried for years and made no progress, then maybe you could say, I can't do that. But that's never the case of what's happening. It's always the case that people are just giving up before they've even tried, or giving up after trying for like a month. And that's not how these things work. And I always like to say, there is no failure. The only failure is giving up. If you do something and then let's fail, I'm doing air quotes with my fingers, but you can't see that. That's not a failure, but you just analyze what went wrong, what you could do better, and now that's added knowledge to your mind that will live with you forever. That's another line of mental software, I like to call it, that makes you make better decisions next time and learn, okay, let's not do that, or we could do this in this different way. And that is progress, and that's learning, and that's developing a skill. And with that, through time, as long as you don't give up, you can do anything. And, maybe you're not going to be an NBA superstar unless you're 6'6" and, naturally tall and have been playing basketball all your life. But for the most part, all of us can pretty much do whatever we want. It's not that hard. No one's different, apart from the freak genetic athletes. No one's really that different. And if someone has something or is doing something that, that there's no inherent qualities to humans that means you can't do something. Someone else is just doing stuff that you're not. Maybe they're practicing more. Maybe they're putting themselves out there more. They're failing more. The master has failed 1,000 times more than the apprentice has even tried. And that's what makes a master. So, there's these deep inherent self-beliefs that can be deprogrammed and analyzed, and that will require, really looking at yourself and looking at your past and history, and if these agreements have been given to you by other people, but they are solvable, they are changeable, and they're not real. They're these fake things, like these fake chains that prevent us from doing something before we've even tried. And it's all silly. It's all made up, and it's all just a protection mechanism because we don't want to feel silly or trying. And yeah, I think that's where it comes from. The good thing is it is solvable, and if anyone's worried that they can't do something, know that you can. As long as you don't put your ego up, and you can learn to fail, shall we say, and figure it out along the way.
Okay, so let's say someone's coming to Sobra and they are feeling down, they're feeling depressed, and they want to know, Sobra, what should I do? What are the first few things you're telling them to get them out of the depressed state and into a state that will make them functional in the world, that will make them be able to achieve? What are those first few steps? Okay,
so I do this with my coaching clients. We have like a 2-month program, and the first stages that I always run through is, let's get the big rocks in order. So these are the things that make, the most difference, and they provide the springboard of energy and, good mental headspace from which everything else develops. So the first 2 things, your diet. What are you eating? Your food has such a huge effect on you beyond just the calories or beyond how the way your body looks and, how it performs, how much energy you have to do everything, your mood. A lot of people don't realize that your food, the gut is where a lot of your neurotransmitters, most of your neurotransmitters are actually made. So, things like dopamine, serotonin, if they're not being created in adequate amounts, then you're not going to feel good. Those are the things that create our reward systems in the brain. If you're not producing enough of it because you're eating Twinkies and Mountain Dew and you're not eating good probiotics things, then the gut microbiome is not going to have what it needs to make you feel good, right? So I always say, okay, diet. Cut out every single processed thing. You should only be eating whole foods that you prepare yourself. And obviously we have a restaurant meal every now and then. It's not going to kill you. But the baseline needs to be, all food that you're preparing yourself. You're not using toxic vegetable oils that have been shown to be neuroinflammatory, which is bad for depression, can lead to things like Alzheimer's and things. Let's cook with ghee, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, those whole foods that, non-processed oils. Let's eat clean. Everything that can sit on your shelf for months at a time, and then you can just go pick it up and eat it. That's not food. Full stop. That, yes, it's sold in the supermarket and people eat it, but that's not real food. It's nonsense garbage that just ends up harming you. And yeah, cool. You have a 4 or 5 second mouthfeel where it pings your receptors, and maybe you enjoy that taste. I can't stand that shit anymore. It's not food. It tastes weird. You feel weird after. They've been specifically formulated to have no nutrition in them so that you stay hungry when you eat them. Because when you stay hungry after eating them, you're going to buy more. So these mass-produced factory, processed foods, they're made to not satiate you. So, and then, they put the artificial dyes in them, which have been shown to create anxiety and depression themselves. They put, they bump up the salt, but then they take out all the fat, which is satiating. All of these things which end up, you're just shoveling this weird fake food into your mouth, and it's adding calories to you. It's not giving you the nutrition you actually need. So hunger itself is a cue from our bodies to provide it with the nutrition it needs. Amino acids to repair the muscles, fats so that it can create testosterone, all of those things which, run our body well. And if you're eating just fake food that has none of that in that, then you're just going to stay hungry. That's why people can smash a whole bag of potato chips. Oh, I'm still hungry, and go get a Mountain Dew. That alone, replacing it with whole foods that you cook yourself, and there's more information, I'm sure, on my Twitter. If people want the specifics of it, it will take a long while here. But doing that alone will mean you have more energy, a better mood, your skin clears up, your body looks better, you feel better in general. That gives you a springboard to then do other things within your life. So that's part one. Part two is your sleep. Sleep is such an underrated part of living as a human. There are so many different processes that go on during sleep in terms of our recovery and, resetting the brain each day. We don't really know exactly what's going on for the most part in Western science. All you need to know is it's important. You should be getting 8 hours minimum. If you're lifting, 9 hours is good. I do 9 hours and a nap as well in the early afternoon. But that means, it's all well and good being in bed for 8 hours, but if you're not sleeping properly and getting that good, deep, restful, restorative sleep, then, that's not as beneficial either. So you need to make sure that you're turning off all electronic devices and lights maybe like an hour before bed. That's a huge one. Most people are on their phone and laptop in their beds right before they go to sleep, which is just stupid. It's going to mess up your circadian rhythm. You need to make sure that you're going to bed and rising at the same time every day, getting into that routine. And then your brain and body knows, okay, this is when we go to sleep. This is when I need to release the different chemicals of the brain, which make us feel tired. And then in the morning, make us feel awake. So we're ready to go. And, there's no grogginess. Like I haven't used an alarm in years now because, I plan out my day and I know when I need to be up. But then I'm also going to bed at a reasonable time so that my body just wakes up, at 6 a.m. And it's, okay, cool, we're refreshed and we're awake. There's no need for that alarm to jar you out and be like, oh shit, where am I? That horrible feeling. But that's I have to use an alarm for work. Yeah, you do. Let's maybe set an alarm for that, the latest time you have to be awake. But if you're getting to bed at a reasonable time, you wake up naturally, you don't need one. So I recommend that everyone kind of throw out their alarm if they can, but make sure that they're going to bed at a reasonable time so they're getting enough sleep that their body just wakes up normally. So making sure that you're a complete darkness as well is a big one. No street lights coming in. Getting an eye mask is a good one for that. Any light that comes in through the eyelids, even when your eyes are closed, is going to mess up your brain during sleep. Making sure the room's cool is a big one. I like to have a cup of chamomile tea like 20 minutes before bed, and then I'll put an amino acid in it called glycine, which has been shown to promote deep sleep, that REM sleep, that really restorative sleep. The other thing I like to do with sleep that makes a huge difference in how rested you feel is taping the mouth. And what that does is ensures that you're only nasal breathing throughout the night. And that's important because when you nasal breathe, first of all, we're only meant to nasal breathe as breathing. For the most part, obviously there are times of extreme exertion when you have to breathe through the mouth just to get that extra airflow in. If you're being chased by a tiger or something, that's a theoretical. But breathing through the nose, you're filtering the air through the nose or the hairs in the nose. You're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. You're calming the body, and you're also breathing through the diaphragm a lot easier. It's like a natural movement when you breathe through the nose. When you breathe through the diaphragm, that moves the bottom of the spine and promotes the movement of the cerebrospinal fluid up and down the spine. And that's obviously the fluid that your brain resides in. So at night, when you tape your mouth, you're only nasal breathing for that reason. That movement of the cerebrospinal fluid is going to clear the brain's inflammation that accumulates throughout the day. So the sleep is actually going to be a lot more restorative because of that. So you're going to get the same amount of sleep if you're only nasal breathing, and you feel a lot more restored and less tired. And I've heard that from lots and lots of people who I've given that recommendation. So there are a few things. There's a lot more you can do with sleep just to make it, tip top. But if you do those things, then that's going to be beneficial for the most part in improving your sleep and quality of life. And, people don't realize because it's, everyone's sleep is fucked up these days. Everyone. So when you have that in check, it's almost like a superpower. You're not tired throughout the day. You have energy to pursue everything. You have energy to go to your full-time job, but then also work out and also do like an hour and a half of work on your side hustle each day when you get home, and you're not just completely drained. And that's, I think, a large part of breaking out of the matrix is having the energy to look after yourself, cook your own meals, keep your fucking house clean, all of these things which, maybe we take for granted. But if you're not in a state of optimal health, it's a lot harder to do these things. Even your relationships. If you're tired, you're going to be cranky. You're going to snap at your partner. Getting sleep to a good level, improving your diet to nourish your body with the things that it needs. And the third part that I would say as, the starter things is to have gratitude. Gratitude is probably the number one. Having gratitude opens up everything else. Being happy and grateful for the life that you have, that you're even existing, that the chances of you being the sperm that got to the egg at the initial point of conception is, millions to one. So even that, there are so many potential lives that didn't get to exist. And the fact that we are here in this world, we have the conscious ability to change our lives and interact with people, that alone is enough to be eternally grateful for. Add on top of that, in the first world country, you're listening to this podcast, you have access to the internet, you probably have a fridge, all of these things which we take for granted that millions of people across the world would kill for the opportunity to be where we are. So, it's having gratitude for your job. Even if you hate it, you have a job that's providing you with income. You have the capacity and awareness now to change that and change the lot in your life, and having gratitude for the problems that you have in life. Having gratitude that, okay, this area of my life, maybe it's not where it could be or where I want it to be. I am grateful for the fact that I can realize that, because now I can change it because I'm conscious of it. If you're unconscious of it, then how are you going to change it? You don't know what's happening. So having gratitude for your problems and all of that, when you're doing that on a regular basis, life just seems better. And, you're happy that you get to go about your day, and you're happy that you get to enjoy a hot shower. All of those things kind of snowball into a positive mindset, sending out more positive vibrational energy that is going to attract more beneficial things to be grateful for. So it's kind of those are the three main things that I would say if someone doesn't really know what to do. And obviously lifting as well, that's kind of a given if you're not already training. But I'd say for the most part people are, if they're listening to this, because they realize, how important it is. Lifting, cleaning up your diet, sleeping properly, having gratitude for everything. If you're doing those things, it's pretty hard to not be in a good state of mind, and you're going to be in a great place to affect change in the things that maybe you're not that happy about.
Beautifully said, Sobra, and I'm so grateful for you for coming on this podcast to explain all those so well. You've never seen someone who's grateful for a moment or grateful for something and be unhappy at the same time. And it's so important. And so I'm curious, was there a period of your life when you weren't grateful for things? And what happened when you started to be grateful? If you always were grateful, God bless, man. That's incredible.
No. As much as I would like to say that I've always been perfect, and I'm not perfect now, obviously, but I think it started with, again, like just a slow process of realizing, okay, the things that I'm worried about, do they really matter? I always like to think about, if something's stressing you out or worrying you, is this going to matter in an hour? If not, cool, don't worry about it. Is this going to matter in a day? Probably not. Cool, don't worry about it. Is it going to matter in a week, 1 month, a year, 5 years? You ask yourselves those questions with the feelings of pain that we have, and it's usually, or stress. The answer is usually no, and that's just a bit of a perspective booster that's good to have. For me, it was a slow process of realizing that the stuff that I was worried about didn't matter. What really counts and matters in life, sharing time with your loved ones, getting outside, getting physical exercise, helping other people is such a huge one, and probably the top of the list in that respect. But I would say that, like, I did have pretty good role models in terms of my dad. He told me, like, not to worry about things outside of my control as well. He was always showing me the benefits of physical exercise and being happy and grateful for those things. But of course, it's not an overnight process, and it is a bit of a practice thing. Again, now that you're aware and knowledgeable about this stuff, it is a case of just slowly over the years, catching yourself when you are, worrying about something or not being grateful for something, and it just becomes, with repetition, more so the default state of your mind. The more you do it and the more you're aware of it and conscious of it. And I think for me, that's just been a process of practicing it, and eventually everything you become grateful for. When you are grateful for everything, it seems like your life responds accordingly. When you're always seeing the negative in everything, when you're always down in the dumps and depressed and, hating life, that seems to be when life responds with more bullshit. When you are grateful for things, and it starts with the small things and opens up to the point being grateful for your problems, life seems to respond accordingly and respond with more success, more beautiful things to be grateful for. And that's been the case in everyone that I've kind of introduced this concept to. There is this idea of, the law of attraction. You're going to attract what thoughts you are having each day. If you are operating from a low vibrational mindset and you're angry and you're jealous and you're fearful all the time, then you're going to attract more of those kind of things which invite that thinking. If you're grateful, if you are happy about things, if you're doing your best, if you're helping other people, then that attracts higher vibrational things into your life. That attracts success. And it sounds, recursive in a way for people that haven't really delved into the concept, but I'm sure you can attribute or, back this up as well, is that most success happens when you are earnestly trying, you're doing your best, you're telling the truth, you're living a life that's more in accordance with your values, so you're going to be happier about things on a day-to-day basis, and it all kind of snowballs and attracts more things from there.
Certainly has proven true in my life, and it sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're just hearing this for the first time, my initial reaction to hearing it for the first time was, yeah, that's bullshit. Like, no way. Yeah. Like, the world works, it's cold, whatever, you can't just attract good vibes into your life. Like, what the hell are you talking about? But as you grow and as you learn and as you see, and it happened over and over and over again, it's like you can't ignore this shit. So, yeah, 100% in agreement with you there. So, I want to talk about something that brings someone's vibration down, and it's a tweet you had recently, which is, it's crazy how we've been brainwashed into accepting watching pixels of other people having sex. Not good. I mean, like, it is so true, right? Like, this is the craziest thing. And we just accept it as normal. And so I want you to talk a little bit about this tweet and talk a little bit about the concept in general, because I think it gets brushed under the rug, and I don't want to do that with this podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about porn, and more specifically the cultural reverence that we have of porn is like this, it's just a natural expression of sexuality, everyone should watch porn if they want to, everyone has natural sexual feelings, and, it's just an outlet of that. It's cope. It's this thing that I personally, as a young guy, everyone gets caught up in to some degree, because we're told as a young guy, your hormones are flying out off the radar, you are constantly a walking ball of boners, shall we say. So this, especially as like a young teenage guy, maybe you haven't talked to many girls, like this becomes this outlet where, you look at porn on your phone and maybe you bust one out, and it's normalized in Western culture. But if you really break down what it is, you are probably sitting in the dark on your laptop or on your phone, touching yourself like a monkey at these dancing images on a computer screen or a phone screen. And if you look at it like that, like, what are we doing here? Like, shouldn't you be, talking to girls and looking to enact that in your real life? Or, for the most part, it is like this demon that sucks our sexual energy out of us, that, that sexual energy can be directed into more creative things. And that's maybe a separate topic, but porn on the whole, at the very least, it's a complete waste of time. Where I always like to say to guys, like, if you're having trouble quitting porn, next time you do it, or just in general, visualize like a third-person camera looking at yourself in the room, where you're like illuminated by the light of the screen. Again, you're hunched over, jerking off. Like, that's not a pretty sight. And it helps to just separate yourself from it. You're not just like completely in the moment of like sexual arousal, whatever it is. And I think for the most part, it's entering into the global consciousness that maybe this isn't what we should be doing, especially, at the very least, it's a waste of time. At the very worst, it's completely frying our brain's natural attraction mechanisms. It is completely stuffing up our dopamine reward system as well, to the point where if you're addicted to porn or watching porn every day, sometimes for hours a day, that to your brain is thinking, oh man, we're doing so well. We're having sex with another beautiful girl, several beautiful girls every night. We don't have to do shit. Our biological reproductive mechanism is, we're maxed out. We're busting loads all the time, impregnating all these beautiful women. We're fine. We're good. And then your brain doesn't have to do anything else, because ultimately our biological imperative is to pass on our genes and replicate ourselves. That's, the underlying factor, the driving factor behind us as organisms. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's how we've existed as a species for thousands of years. So porn becomes that's the direction of that energy goes to porn instead of real life itself and your social interactions. And a lot of people, when they quit porn or stop watching it, they will notice that conversation is a lot more easy. The reward they get from listening to music, or the feeling they get from listening to music, is now like they get this rush, there's the dopamine returning to a normal level. And there are some people that say it takes around 90 days for a complete full reset if you just start watching porn entirely. But I would say that, within a few weeks, if you're watching porn daily, if you cut that out, you'll notice it, even within a week, you'll notice, okay, I've got a bit more energy and I feel a bit more optimistic about the world. And the side note of that is, you're not busting loads all the time, which is a different topic of semen retention we can get into if you want. But porn itself is, it replaces relationships and female interaction. And sometimes, if girls are watching it as well, it replaces male interaction. And it becomes this fake approximation of sexual attraction and relationships in general. And when you quit porn, you'll notice like a pretty girl will walk past you and you'll get this rush, like, whoa, okay. Maybe you'll hold hands with a girl and feel aroused. Whereas before, because you are acclimatized and accustomed to, this full HD video of 3 different girls sucking you off, that's what it gets to is like the first time you watch porn, you'll just see a picture of a naked lady and be aroused. And then that doesn't do it for you anymore. So you have to watch a video and then more depraved stuff. And that's the cycle that a lot of people get into. But it is probably, it's one of the other things I mentioned in the coaching that I do is like, okay, stop watching porn, stop masturbating all the time. And that alone gives back such a level of control. Your dopamine begins to reset so that other areas of your life become more enthralling and engaging, to the point where it's almost like if you're watching porn all the time, you have this filter over your life, which is like more dulled and depressed. And I think, possibly, well, definitely, there are powers that be behind the scenes that are pushing this message that porn is normal, that we should all watch porn as part of our natural sexual release, and it is to pacify and keep docile the male population. This porn has been used as a weapon of warfare in some countries where they want to dull and pacify the population. They'll play porn over the airwaves just to keep people indoors and watching it, because it is, as part of our innate biological imperative, one of the highest, enticing things to us as a biological organism. So there are many things that are, why we should not watch porn, and I think it is a rejection of modernity in a way, which is a good thing. Getting rid of that. I'm speaking from experience. I did watch porn as a young guy, and I'm sure everyone has to some degree, different degrees, of course. But it really is something that, as a dude or just as a person, you should cut out entirely, because it takes away from your ability to live life, and it takes away your ability to form relationships, and it warps your sexual tastes to a point that's like, that's not really reality in a sense. And again, like I said before, at the very least, it's a complete waste of your time. You could be doing anything else instead of watching porn, and it's not essential. you will go on fine without it, a million times better in your life. And it is something that you should cut out of your life entirely.
I couldn't agree more. And switching gears a little bit, I want to talk to you about another tweet you had, which was that kids should be taught mindfulness / emotional awareness from a young age. And I thought this was so important. And I'm curious about, what do you think what ways are there to teach kids mindfulness at such a young age? I know that, for example, Josh Waitzkin, he took his child or son out into the rain, and he would just teach him with the rain and the snow, like we were talking about before, about how the rain and snow are actually good things and how they're actually beneficial. And, a lot of people will use that rain and snow as a way to not go to the gym or not do what they're supposed to do because it's bad weather. But he was starting teaching his kid at an early age that the rain and snow are awesome weathers as well. So what do you think about ways to teach kids mindfulness?
So I forget where I read it, but it was this idea that someone was talking about with their own kid, is that when their kid gets angry, they will, sit down with their kid and they won't yell at their kid. That's the other thing. It's, you can't teach these things to your children if you are also getting angry all the time over shit that doesn't matter. And, you should never be angry about something trivial for the most part. Obviously, there are great injustices in the world, and it's good to have righteous anger over these things. But for the most part, your day-to-day life, there's nothing to get angry about. It's just you with a lack of emotional control, or again, it goes back to those beliefs. If you believe that if X happens, this person has to be angry, so you become angry. And then if you feel that anger, you follow it, you become angry, you end up saying something rude to your kid or whatever else. But in terms of teaching your kid that, this idea that I forget where it came from, but they sat down with their kid. The next time their kid had a tantrum or something, they say, hey, Johnny, when you feel angry like this, these are the angry monkeys that come and visit us every now and then. And you are not the angry monkeys. The angry monkeys just like to come into your head and make you feel upset. And kind of relating it so that the kid can conceptualize it as, the angry monkeys are back, and to step away and become separate from that and instill some level of awareness in them that they are not the anger, and maybe the angry monkeys have come to stay. I like that, the way of breaking it down. And again, most kids, or all kids, are just smaller adults. They're not stupid. They don't have to be. They don't have to have like a kiddie gloves on everything. So you can genuinely say the same things to your kids once they have a grasp of language that we're saying now to adults. It's like, okay, this angry thought comes into your head, but you can just let that pass as well. And you don't have to play with the angry monkeys in a sense. And, this can start with maybe sitting down as a family and doing a group meditation where you just teach them, these tools and the separation of thought versus who they are. I think, if schools had a class on this at a young age, once kids are old enough to understand these things, would be invaluable, because then, they don't, through their entire formative years, only there's no tools that we have in Western society really to break this stuff down. So I think, whether it's your own kids or you try and get your school to incorporate some of these lessons, I think it's such an important tool that will benefit kids the earlier that it's given to them. And, that can be with anger, that can be with jealousy or fear or sadness, and all of these things that you can kind of just tell children, look, it's temporary. You don't have to become the thought or the feeling, and conceptualizing in a way that, the angry monkeys or whatever it is, you can put your own spin on it, I think is super important, and something that I'll be doing with my kids one day as well.
What does Sobra's meditation practice currently look like?
So,
and I use the word meditation very broadly,
Yeah.
like writing is meditation, journaling, all this stuff
Yeah.
is meditation, from my perspective at least.
yeah, and I agree with that. For me, it started with the gym, and it's why, my Twitter handle, I call myself a physical spiritualist, is because when you are in a deep set of heavy squats, when you are getting towards the end of that set, nothing else matters. You're not thinking about anything else except the burning in your legs and, oh shit, I got to get this next rep up. I have to recruit myself, all the muscle fibers in my legs, and just right to the top and bust that out. And in that, you are not worried about the other bullshit that's going on in your life, and all that really comes to the forefront of your head is that burning and that singular focus that you have to complete the set. And that's meditation in a way. And I think one of the benefits that people see from exercise is that through exercise, that's like the only time, unless they are, specifically doing meditation, that's the only time that they get out of their own head and they have this singular awareness, which is, what we can call meditation. For me, it's that, working out regularly and consistently. It can be, again, returning to awareness. Meditation probably can be defined as, this specific practice where you're sitting down, and I think that's important to have that specific meditation as well, because you can, to a certain point, the gym, you could argue that external influence is forcing you to meditate. But the skill of meditating when nothing else is going on, just sitting there or lying there, whatever it is, that is a sort of separate meditation, and I think that's super important as well. For me, I like to do it in a couple of ways. The first one being the gym, the second one being just a general awareness overall of the breath. If you are in traffic, you can, let's separate from my thoughts for a bit. Let's do some deep nasal breathing. Let's just return my attention to the rising and falling of my chest as I breathe. That is meditation. And if you can have that thought throughout the day, then, whenever it happens, you always have access to breathing wherever you are. You always have access to just taking a step back from the running thoughts in your mind and having awareness of them and making sure that you're not just endlessly chasing the thought down a rabbit hole. But then there's also the times where I will sit down. Great times to do it are upon waking and before bed, even if it's just a few minutes. If it's literally 5 minutes where you're just sitting, you're not waking up and instantly heading to the shower, instantly thinking about work, instantly going to do coffee, whatever it is, just sitting there, breathing through the nose, again, nasal breathing, and just being, and not, the thoughts will come into your mind. It'll probably take a while for you to get into that space, but once you're in that space, you spend a few minutes there. There are legitimate brain changes that go on when you meditate and when you stop entertaining every single thought that comes into your head and just having that awareness of where you are, your body, your breath. That in itself can be accessed whenever. For me, I do that, I wouldn't say that I sit down and have a meditation session every day, and I probably should, but I'm just being honest. I'm training all the time, but I do have the constant awareness of every now and then, if the thought pops into my head, okay, let's just stop for a second. Let's breathe. Let's be aware that my thoughts are popping into my head, and then I just let them go. And I think with the concept of meditation in the whole, if you are, you catch yourself wandering through the thought, and this will happen, of course, you'll follow that thought, and then you'll be thinking about fucking Jimmy from the other day and the argument you had. but then you become aware again of where you are and, oh shit, I'm meant to be meditating. Don't beat yourself up. Don't then be like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I let this thought take me away? It's like, no, okay, you're a human. It happens. You're not a fucking Zen master. And even the Zen masters, they have the same issues. They'll follow a thought down and have to do the same thing and become aware that you were thinking, and then boom, you're just back to the meditative position. The breath is such an important one and a good focal point for you to just come back to and think about. Another technique that I like to do is a body scan, and I like to do this one before bed. You can do it whenever, but I find it's quite relaxing. So before bed, when you're lying in bed, and you can do it in the same when you're awake, when you get up in the morning, just before you instantly get up, just, okay, I'm awake. Let's think about every part of my body, and let's slowly relax every part of my body. And how is my body feeling? Am I tight in this area? And when you bring your awareness to each part of the body, you think, okay, top of my head, let's relax the forehead muscles, and maybe my brow's been furrowed for a long time and I haven't let that go. And when you do that, you relax your jaw muscles, and then you go to your neck. Maybe you do a few neck rolls, and you just check in with your body and become aware of how you're feeling, and you do that slowly right down to your toes. That's a really good practice to do as well, which is meditative and can be relaxing and something that I do before bed. But there are a couple of meditative practices that, you really want to figure out something that's going to be good for you and that you're going to be consistent with. And, the best meditation is the one that you enjoy and the one that you can fit into your routine. And you don't have to sit there with your legs crossed for half an hour straight, especially when you're starting, although that's good as well if you enjoy that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think any meditation that you do regularly, even if it's 5 minutes, anyone can commit to 5 minutes. There's that saying, it's like, I meditate every day unless I'm too busy. But then that means you should meditate more, So it's whatever you want to do, whatever sits right with you. You have access to it throughout the day through your breath, or whenever you just bring your awareness back to being and being conscious of your thoughts rather than just being your thoughts, which is our modus operandi for most of the day. So a couple of things in there. Meditation is super good. It can be accessed through normal sitting down meditating or in the gym, whatever it is.
I love what you said about meditation with the thoughts. When the thoughts occur while you're meditating, not to beat yourself up, because I think that people lose track of this, and I think that, at least I did when I was first starting my practice, is like because you're recognizing the thoughts, that's a good thing. If your mind drifts away from nothingness or from the breath, that is a positive, and it is becoming aware of that thought that you're really trying to improve that skill rather than having no thoughts. The goal of meditation is not to have zero thoughts. And so I just wanted to hammer that point home before.
Yeah, it's also have gratitude for the fact that your mind has wandered, because now that's something for you to be conscious and improve on. Have gratitude that your mind is wandering, so then you can be like, oh shit, my mind's doing it again. Haha. Funny. And then you can bring your attention back to meditation. And if it was easy, if meditation was easy and you sat there and you had zero thoughts, then what the fuck are you doing? There's no improvement there, like having gratitude for your problems. Again, that inherent principle in everything, because it opens up your ability to improve. And then when you build that skill, you'll realize the more general feelings of contentedness and whatever it is that leaks into other areas of your life, to the point where when you're meditating regularly, if an angry thought comes in, you more readily just step back from that and you go, why did whatever happened around me make me feel angry? And then once you're aware of that, the anger dissipates, rather than just following it into anger and then reacting angrily. You just go, why did that make me angry? And in doing that, it disappears.
Isn't it interesting that when we identify quote unquote negative emotions, and whether that be fear, anger, worry, tension, if we identify them, so often they go away because we haven't placed a name on it. And then once we are aware of it, then all of a sudden we have control over it in a sense, and we are able to take a step in saying, oh, wow, this is what I should do, or wow, that's what I was afraid of. What do you think about that? Is that something you've experienced as well?
Yeah, well, again, it's awareness, and it's a skill, and it builds with time, and the more you become aware of your own BS in your mind, the more you can take steps to work against that. And the less you will, if you're angry about something else and you hold that anger all day and then you take it out on your partner or family, that's all avoidable, and your relationships are going to blossom because of that, because you're no longer holding on to that emotional poison all day. Like, oh, work was such a bad day. Now I'm in a bad mood and I'm going to come home and work was bad and now I'm angry and just you're a shit person to be around. It's like, yes, maybe your work day was stressful. Yes, maybe some people were dickheads. But for, 99 times out of 100, you are taking this emotional poison and holding on to it because you feel like a victim and you feel like you deserve to have this anger or whatever it is. And then when you hold on to that, all of your actions and thoughts are going to be colored through that. And you can just as easily, with awareness, realize that, oh, I don't need to hold on to this. Like, yes, maybe someone was annoying at work, but that is an action of someone else that it is external to your mind state and your, emotional state within, which is under your control. So what happens when people take anger from things? It's like you can't give someone offense. You can only take offense. So yes, someone can say something rude to you, but the actual emotional dissonance that you feel and the anger that you feel is a result of you thinking, the preconceived belief that if someone says that to you, you have to respond to anger because he's attacked you. But when you realize that awareness that there is no you as such, there's just you, the awareness behind the thoughts. Once you have that awareness and, you're woke in that sense, all of the emotional dissonance kind of falls away with practice, and then you can step into a place where, yes, you'll feel the anger, but you'll separate from that. And then 10 minutes later, you're not going to hold on to the anger, and it's not going to be, I had a bad day, oh God, it's so bad. All of this bullshit, which we then pass on this emotional vitriol to other people, it's completely unnecessary. And when you eliminate that with practice, that's when your life starts to change. That's when your relationships improve. Having gratitude for all that shit, that is the key to a mentally sound mind. And when you have a mentally sound mind, you're going to make better decisions and you're going to learn to improve your life.
Couldn't agree more, my man. Before we wrap this conversation up, I want to ask about this book that you mentioned on Twitter the other day, and that is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. This was also a key book for me in waking myself up to that I need to get shit done. Talk to me a little bit about this book and what it meant to you and what it taught you.
So the idea of the book was Napoleon Hill living his life, and it's been an extremely colored life, full of success, full of failure. And he's interviewed a lot of people that had success in their particular fields and kind of identified the things that make people successful and the pitfalls of where people go wrong. And he frames it as the devil, the devil trying to convince people to act, in these ways which empower the devil and lead people down these paths of temptation. And for me, it kind of, when you conceptualize it like that, when you then live within your own life, you can see the, quote, devil trying to tempt you to lead things or make the choices that harm you. And he's kind of identified these things where, maybe it's the beliefs that people have that kind of prevent them from succeeding. But the main thing that I took away from it was that if you want to succeed, you have to have this innate belief in yourself, in your connection to the universe, and that the universe is going to provide for you. You have to not see your failures as a temporary hurdle to learn from. His quote is like, from every failure, extract a seed of learning. And if you do that, you're going to be constantly building and improving the mental software that you then run for the rest of your life. But, I can't really do it justice just speaking about it. I recommend everyone read it, of course. Napoleon Hill, his more known book is Think and Grow Rich, which some people think is a bit woo-woo, whatever. But, he has these interviews of successful people. He's correlated the things that they all do, and it is that innate self-belief. It is never seeing failure as permanent. It is trusting in the universe and trusting in yourself and trusting that you will attain success, whatever that it means for you, if you just stick with it and you keep on trying and learning and moving through life with this attitude, to not kind of fall into the devils of temptation.
Beautifully said. And I want to ask Sobra, what is your vision for what you're doing? It seems like, from my perspective, you're building a media company, but I'd love to hear in your words what your vision for what you are creating.
So, every day I have new ideas for what this whole thing can lead to. And it's starting with, the supplement company that I want to build to this huge thing. It's going to be the premier name in terms of whole food supplements, organic, of course. That's one side of it. I want to create wellness complexes worldwide on the beach, things like the sauna, the ice plunge. I want Sobra and the associated things to just be, encompass everything which raises the vibration of people, contributes to the health of people. Eventually the media company side of it, I want to produce films which are inspiring and kind of those innate mythological heroic stories, all those kinds of things. I want arts festivals. I want music festivals. I'm not sure people know, but, I DJ as a hobby of mine. I love the empowering qualities of music and the way that we can listen to a great song and dance and just live. It's basically going to be an amalgamation of everything that I think helps humans out. It's going to be, trying to distill the lessons from philosophy that I've learnt to a more palatable form that we can kind of leak into the mainstream more. Eventually, do as much as I can to build businesses that are going to help people, products that are going to improve people's quality of life. And who knows where it's going to go, honestly, man. I just want to do as much as that I can in this life to help as many people as possible, make people healthy in their body, in their mind, make them understand what's possible with focused effort and consistent action, and bring people out of fear in general, fear of, their body failing or fear of disease and all of these things, which I think, people are open to it. It just needs to be distilled in a way that's palatable for most people, that isn't just woo-woo if they have this preconceived belief of all these things, and, making people aware of the true nature of the universe and ourselves. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I have a lot of big ideas, and I know that with consistent action and help from other people and with effort, I can bring them into reality, and I see that as just, a net positive for the world. And if I can help one person, then I'm doing my job.
Well, I'm looking forward to you bringing this vision into reality It's been a pleasure following your thoughts for the past, 9-10 months since I've been following you. And I'm looking forward to following more and seeing where this goes. Thank you for taking the time, my man. Where can people find more Sobra if they want it?
So obviously Twitter's the main one. Sobra, SOLBRAH is my username there. Instagram, I post a lot of visuals, aesthetics, and longer pieces that don't fit into the Twitter text count. That's real Sobra. But yeah, otherwise, my mailing list, solbra.com, you can get on there. I post email exclusive stuff, gym routines through there. We're going to be launching a glycine product, that amino acid that helps with sleep that I mentioned earlier. So SolSups, SOLSUPPS on Instagram. Again, I'll be mentioning that stuff on the mailing list as well. Mailing list is probably the main one that I'll say to people to get on, solbra.com. I also have my podcast, Solbra's Soulcast, where we talk about similar stuff that we've talked about here today. That's on all platforms. But yeah, check those out. I want to thank you, Danny, for having me on. We had a great conversation, and I'm sure we'll do this again soon.
No doubt about it. A lot of fun. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
That was my episode with Sobra. If you enjoyed it, let me know on Twitter at HeyDannyMiranda. Sign up to Tuesday Treasure, my weekly newsletter. Shoot me an email there. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this episode. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.